into our ongoing series of interviews with candidates for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Today, we're delighted to have Judge Gale Adams. Judge Adams, it's great to see you and welcome.
Great to be here. And thank you so much for the opportunity just to share some time with you.
I believe you're at the Superior Court Judges Conference today.
I am, yes, in beautiful Beaufort, North Carolina.
A long way from Asheville, I might add.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville has done a great public service by giving the public a chance to talk with candidates like you for our appellate courts. And I always like to begin by saying, tell us something about your background growing up, and then we'll get into all the candidacy information.
All right, sure. I was raised in rural northeastern North Carolina by a single mother of four, and I grew up working in the tobacco fields of Warren County. I got the notion to go to law school when I participated in a debate in the 9th grade. And when I got my grade back, my teacher had written on my evaluation, she said, "You really should think about becoming a lawyer." I had not decided what I wanted to do with my life, so I decided, why not? And so that's her words that planted the seed and set me on a path towards where I am now.
Well, I believe you were telling me before we started this interview that you actually started working in the tobacco fields at 8, 9, 10 years old, which is incredibly young, but it certainly develops a great work ethic.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So when you're doing tobacco, the jobs are divided according to men's work and women's work.
Yeah.
Men generally worked in the field in tobacco. And so I was there handing leaves. And so, but of course, if there was a shortage in the fields, we would go out and work in the fields as well, priming tobacco. But primarily I worked at the rack, and you would wrap the tobacco onto tobacco sticks, and then those tobacco sticks would be placed inside of a barn for the tobacco to be cured. So that's the old school way when I was growing up. That's how it was done. I'm sure it's a little bit different now because they have, machinery and devices now that, wrap your tobacco. So yes.
It's a long way from the tobacco fields of Warren County to the campus at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So tell us about that journey.
Oh my goodness. So yes, I attended UNC Chapel Hill. I double majored in English and economics. Being from a small town, you can imagine we don't have a bus system. So I remember when I first got to Carolina, it was me and another friend of mine from the same high school. We decided we were going to tour the campus. And so we decided, we saw these buses riding around. So we said, we're going to get on the bus and we're going to just ride around and see what's at Carolina. So we got on the bus, and when it came time for me to get off, the bus passed my stop, and I didn't know how to make the bus stop so that I could get off. so he and I are both panicking, like, how do we get off this thing? And so I had to ride the route all the way around again. And by that time, he and I both figured out that there was this wire that ran from the front to the back of the bus that you had to pull, and then a little bell would ding and let the bus driver know that they needed to stop at that particular stop. So
that wasn't part of well, that wasn't part of orientation in
no, it was not part of orientation. So that was my first, really memorable experience at Carolina, is trying to figure out how to get off the city bus. So yes, I double majored in English and economics. I worked my way through school while I was there. And then I attended North Carolina Central University School of Law, continuing to work my way through school. I worked 3 and 4 jobs just to pay tuition, living expenses, all that books, everything that comes with going to school.
And was that in the day program? Central as an evening program?
Yes, it was in the day program. Yes, it was in the day program.
That is the challenge. It sounds like you didn't get much sleep over the course of all that time.
You know what? I did not realize. So there were some times that I was actually getting overtime on, more than one job, as I was trying to make ends meet. So that meant I was working more than 40 hours a week at two different jobs. But you know what? That's where those tobacco fields come in. They certainly, they instill that work ethic that you just keep on going, and keep working. And so, yeah, so that work experience served me well from the tobacco fields.
Well, and so what are your memories of law school other than working an additional 40 hours? Because law school is a full time job. Um,
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Well, my memories of law school would have to be the late night hours, pulling all nighters to study and to get ready for an exam the next day. And I enjoyed, even though it was a lot of reading, a lot of hard work, I also enjoyed the study groups, where we would get together and we would just, discuss, of course, various legal issues that might be on the test the next day. So I really enjoyed the collegiality with my fellow law students. That was a huge component of law school that I tremendously enjoyed, working with other students for a common goal, which was to get
any
through that.
yeah, any particular student or students or professors that either made a huge impression on you or impacted your career path?
Well, I would have to say that there was one particular student who made a huge impression on me because we ended up getting married.
I was wondering if that was the case.
So, yeah, so the first year of law school, I met my husband, Glenn Adams, and we have now been married 37 years and, four children down the road. But yes, I met him during the first year of law school, and we dated all through law school and then married a year after we graduated. And I would have to say, I mean, there's so many law professors who I could point to. Professor Charles Smith, who was tremendous and just trying to, help me make sure that I made it through successfully. Fred Williams, Professor Ringer, who taught evidence, who everybody absolutely loved.
Right.
There are just so many professors who I could point to who contributed significantly to my career.
So when you were in law school, did the thought of ever becoming a judge enter your career path vision?
Actually, no. I had not even contemplated becoming a judge. I just planned to. When I was in law school, I actually planned to um, practice law, and I wanted to become a family law attorney. Um, I had seen, how my mother was treated when we were growing up, and so that kind of sparked me wanting to pursue a career in family law. But then I ended up taking a different path because I joined the Navy, and so that just set me on a different path altogether. But yeah, I had not contemplated becoming a judge.
So that's an interesting career turn. You come out of law school and you join the Navy. You're married, though. I assume did your husband didn't join the Navy?
Correct. He
Yeah.
likes to say he was a Navy husband.
So tell us about your experience in the military then.
Well, I joined the military as a Navy JAG officer, and I was stationed in Norfolk Naval Base, which is the largest naval base. And one of the things about the naval, that being the largest naval base, is that lawyers or JAG officers are sent out to different areas to handle different matters. So, for instance, you might have a JAG officer who was sent to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. You might have a JAG officer who was sent to Bermuda. You might have a JAG officer who was sent to Panama. And to handle legal matters, because they would only have a staff judge advocate. So if there was something that required a JAG officer to handle something that a SJA couldn't handle, then they would send a lawyer from the Norfolk Naval Base to handle that matter. And so while I was in, I traveled to Bermuda twice to handle some legal matters there. I traveled to Panama to handle a legal matter there, usually involving a service member who was having some difficulties. And Panama, I remember specifically because it was the first time I had ever been in a country where there were armed guards, military members on the street corners. And just really blew my mind when I got there and I saw that.
So
So
to put this in context, though, uh, for people listening, you go back to the movie A Few Good Men with
uh,
Tom Cruise and Demi Moore. You were that sharp woman attorney in uniform participating in the case, played by Demi
yes,
Moore, right?
yes, that would be me. Probably not that dramatic, but yes, that would be me wearing the uniform, representing different service members. We would, our main mission was to make sure that the mission was the top priority as far as making sure that the service members were free of distractions from family members and other personal issues that may be going on. And so as a result, I had two functions. I represented service members who had gotten into some trouble and the Navy was trying to administratively process them out of the military. I represented individuals in special court martials, general court martials. I also helped service members prepare wills, prepare powers of attorney so that whenever they got underway for lengthy deployments, their family members, they didn't have to worry about their family members back at home trying to figure out what to do in their absence. And so, like I said, we tried to make sure that we reduce distractions for the service members so that they could focus on the mission of protecting our country.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm curious. JAG officers are going to be land based. Did you spend any time on a ship?
I did. The first, after you finish Naval Justice School, you are assigned for 2 weeks to a ship. And so I was on the USS John King, which was a guided missile destroyer. And I think that's what it was, a guided missile destroyer. And so, yes, you spend 2 weeks on this so that you have some familiarity with what the service members, the sailors, are going through when they're on that ship. I also was on the USS Nimitz, which is an aircraft carrier. And the USS Nimitz, they were getting underway for a 6-month deployment, and they had some legal matters they needed handled before they got underway. Plus, there was a hurricane moving in, so they needed to get out of the port, out of off base very, very quickly. And so I was assigned to go out to the ship to handle those legal matters. And so they had to get underway, and I was stuck on board the ship, and they didn't know quite how they were going to get me off back to land. So we're out in the ocean, and I had to fly off of the aircraft carrier up in a base in New Hampshire. So from Norfolk to New Hampshire, that's how far we had gotten. And so I got the Tail Hooker Award, which is given to a JAG officer or any officer who's not who's not on the carrier, who flies off of a ship. And so I had that experience. It was quite an experience. I have never forgotten that. It was quite an experience flying off of the deck.
Was it a fixed wing aircraft or a helicopter?
It was a fixed wing aircraft.
Here we are with the second part of our interview with Judge Gale Adams, a candidate for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And Judge Adams, when we last talked before technical difficulties, you were flying off of the Nimitz, or as part of your naval JAG experience and getting ready to go back to Fayetteville, or to go to Fayetteville to practice law. And so tell us how you left your time as a Navy JAG officer and went back to Fayetteville. And then what?
Yes, and then I practiced for 2 months with my husband and got an offer with the DA's office. And so I went there, and I was there for about 4 years. Of course, that involves, prosecuting defendants charged with felonies, misdemeanors. I did a lot of drug prosecutions. I was the child abuse prosecutor as part of my duties. I did other cases too, breaking and entering. I mean, anything you can think about, larceny, robbery, but I was the child abuse prosecutor for a while. And after I left the DA's office, then I started working as an assistant federal public defender. And as an assistant federal public defender, the Eastern District of North Carolina travels more than any other district in the United States. We have a very wide territory to cover. So I was on the road all the time. Not to mention that the courts are held in different areas: New Bern, Greenville, Elizabeth City, Raleigh, Wilmington. So you're not only traveling to court, but you're also traveling to meet with your clients who are being housed in different areas, to include out of state. The Marshal Service uses jails in Virginia. And so a lot of traveling involved as an assistant federal public defender.
So did you find the transition from the DA's office and prosecuting individuals to the public defender's office representing defendants as a difficult transition, or had your Navy experience prepared you for it?
My Navy experience prepared me for it, but you still have to change your way of looking at a case, and that does take some time. As a defense attorney, you're looking at everything that sort of is, there are issues in the case. And as a prosecutor, when you're transitioning from, I found it more difficult to transition from being a prosecutor back to being a defense attorney, because as a prosecutor, I'm still looking at all the evidence against this individual, and
Right.
so now you've got to try to look at it a different way and look at some of the things that weren't done that should have been done in a case. So it does require a different perspective, a different thought process as you are assessing and analyzing and reviewing cases. So yes, there is a different, like I said, way of thinking and looking at things when you're transitioning from one to the other. At least that was the case for me. It may not be the case for others, but I found it that was the case for me.
Yeah, I would think that would be a bit of a challenge to make that transition
Yes.
easily. So, had you thought about becoming a judge during this time period?
No, had not really considered becoming a judge. I was just plugging along, doing what I was doing. And then the judge in Cumberland County had indicated that he was going to retire. And so that's when I started looking at and considering a position as a judge.
And that's the Superior Court judge, or
Superior
resident Superior
judge,
Court judge.
yes. I was never a district court judge.
Yeah,
Yes, as
right.
a Superior Court judge.
And so, how did that come about that you found yourself wearing a black robe and assuming another role in the justice system?
The good thing about having practiced on both sides of the courtroom, when cases come before me as a judge, I am able to look at facts and circumstances from a more of a global position, because I can look at it from the defense perspective and I can look at it from the prosecutor's perspective. Having worked with victims and law enforcement as a prosecutor, I understand their perspective, and having represented defendants, I understand their perspective, and so that's helpful. What was new to me more so was the civil part of being the practicing,
Right.
looking at civil cases. That was different. I enjoy the civil law because it was something new and I liked something new and challenging. And so I enjoyed that, the civil part of being a judge. But there was a transition there as well.
Yeah.
And so you're handling all kinds of civil matters, from medical malpractice to car accidents, contract law. So just a lot of different civil matters that I had not previously been exposed to, but you have to learn and just adjust and transition.
Yeah, I should point out for our listeners, the Superior Court trial bench is the sort of the senior trial level position in North Carolina that handles major felonies in the criminal side of the work, and major litigation, um, obviously on the civil side, very different from what our district court judges do. So now, how many years have you served as a Superior Court judge?
I have been a Superior Court judge. I'm now in my second 8-year term, and I'm in the second year of my 8-year term. So
So
that's
10 years, 10 years essentially.
essentially, yes.
Yeah. So what prompted you to decide you're going to embark on a statewide campaign for a seat on the North Carolina Court of Appeals.
I know. What was I thinking?
Yeah, yeah,
That has been a challenge. So when I ran for the Superior Court bench both times, I was unopposed. And so this whole notion of campaigning and raising money and all kinds of candidates forums, that's all new to me. But it's been interesting. I did not know. I tell people, I said I have a newfound respect for people who throw their hat in the ring to run for public office.
right,
Not realize that behind the scenes there's a lot that goes into campaigning, and so it's been a learning experience. One of the things that I have enjoyed tremendously as I have campaigned is meeting people across the state. That has just been the positive and the pros of running a campaign. But yes, I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run, campaigning for the first time, and a statewide race. So you can imagine how
yeah,
the transition there. But I decided to run for the Court of Appeals because I felt like my experience, especially my diverse legal experience on both sides of the courtroom, as well as a Superior Court judge, was something that would bring a not a new perspective, but would be a needed perspective on the Court of Appeals. Because as a Superior Court judge, we are a trial court,
right,
and so cases that are appealed out of the Superior Court and even out of the District Court, and they go to the Court of Appeals, the judges who sit on the Court of Appeals, I think it's helpful to understand what was happening in that courtroom as you are reviewing cases and making decisions about your ruling in a particular case. What was happening on the ground? I call it boots on the ground for trial court. What was
right.
happening in that courtroom? And so I believe that perspective as a Court of Appeals judge is needed. And so when you're one of the three, and you're the voice in the room with the other two colleagues on the bench who are deciding a case, like I said, I believe that perspective from a trial court level is very helpful.
So I think it's important to point out that while attempting to run a statewide campaign, you have also had to maintain your responsibilities holding court all over Eastern North Carolina as a Superior Court judge.
Oh, yes. Own challenges. Since I've been running, I had a 5-week death penalty trial. So of course that demanded a lot of attention. I've held court in Charlotte. I was there for a couple of weeks because the trial carried over. I was in Durham, I think last week or week before last. So yes, you continue to hold your day job and try to do that, well and effectively, so that no one can even tell that you're campaigning. So,
Yeah.
so you want to make sure that no one suffers as a result of, your second job. I like to call it my second job because that's demanding too.
For sure. Well, since this is primarily being broadcast to folks here in Western North Carolina, and your Superior Court judgeship is down east, have you been able to get up to the western part of the state and to God's country, as I call
Well, it depends upon where God's country starts.
it?
I have held court in Union County and I've held court in Mecklenburg County. So
Well,
I
you
don't
haven't gotten west yet, Judge Adams.
God's country. Okay, all right. Well, no, I have not held court in God's country then.
But have you campaigned up? Have you been able to campaign those some up in the western part of the state?
Oh, absolutely. I have
Yeah,
been to Buncombe County several times. I am actually scheduled in my campaign to be in Yancey County and Polk County this weekend. So yes, I travel to the west. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, now tell me where you're going to be in Yancey County, because I'm going to be up there in about 30 hours.
Oh
So,
my,
yeah,
yes. So there's a event I have the I don't know the address right offhand, but there's a
yeah,
in Burnsville.
right, right,
So I'll be there on Saturday around 2 o'clock. And then I'll leave that event. That's from 2 to 4. And then I'll leave that event and travel to Polk County, and their event
right.
starts at 4:30. So I'll be splitting my time between the two.
All right. Well, that's not a short ride from Yancey County down to Polk County, but it's a pretty ride, if you're particularly if you're not on I-26 dealing with construction. But hopefully, I will see you in Yancey County. I'll see if I can make a point to come in for that. And you do need to mention when you're up there that you're friends with Judge Tom Wilson. We were just talking about that. Judge Wilson's my nephew, but Big Tom Wilson was the legendary bear hunter from Yancey County who found Dr. Elisha Mitchell's body when he fell over the falls back in 1856.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
and as you know, Mount Mitchell, which is in Yancey County, is the highest mountain east of the Mississippi River. And Big Tom Wilson, one of my neighbors up there. I'm a voting resident of Yancey County. So,
I
uh,
oh, okay. Did
yeah,
not realize that. Yes, yes.
yeah, yeah. Now, Judge Tom Wilson, candidly, is not a relation, but
Okay.
it'd be fun to mention him up there.
Uh,
They'll at least know who you're talking about in
so
the.
so when I hit Yancey and Polk County, is that God's country?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Polk County's foothills, but you can see God's country from Polk
Okay.
County, But when you hit Yancey County, you are in God's country.
I'm in God's country. Okay, all
Right.
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 Well, I,
So, just a couple more things about your campaign, and we'll wrap up here. Uh, um, any particular issue or um, set of principles that you think you'd like to articulate to listeners about what you would do as a judge on the Court of Appeals?
well, one of the things that I definitely want to emphasize is that as a Court of Appeals judge and as judges, um, we have to follow the law wherever that leads and apply the law to the facts as they exist. And we have to apply the law not as we want it to be, but as it is. And so, from my perspective, that means that politics, partisan ideology, has no place in the courtroom. I also, and I strongly believe that we should not be deciding cases based upon our own personal beliefs. We should be deciding cases based upon the law. And I think that we owe that to the public because that's who we work for. And I also think that judges should be fair and impartial. The same principle, decide cases fairly and impartially based upon what is before us. I also think that because there has been so much partisan politics injected into the judicial branch, from my perspective, that unfortunately, I think that erodes public confidence in the ability of the judiciary to be fair and impartial. And we have to regain their confidence that they can trust us, that when a case comes before us, we are simply following the law, the legal precedent, the statutes, the Constitution. I mean, the case law that exists, we are simply following the law and we are being fair and impartial. Judges have to be independent, they have to be objective. Again, we have to make sure that the public's confidence in us does not erode and they can trust us to do what it is that they've elected us to do.
So, where would listeners go to get more information or to make a donation or register their support for you?
They can visit my website at judgegaleadams.com, and Gale is spelled Gale. There's 3 spellings. I always have to spell it so that people aren't plugging in, Gail or Gayle, but it's Gale. So Judge Gale Adams, and that's Adams with an S and 1 D.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, judgegaleadams.com. And what do we have? 3 weeks to go, something like that.
yes, countdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always by this time in a campaign, I was always already exhausted and running on fumes. So
What it's like then.
yeah. Well, look, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. It's Judge Gale Adams, candidate for the North Carolina Court of Appeals, our intermediate appellate court in the state, and she'll be in Yancey County and Polk County this coming weekend. And if you're in the area and want want to meet Judge Adams personally, come on out. I think it's going to be a good weather, and the leaves will be great. You picked a good time to campaign in the West, Judge Adams.
Yes, wonderful.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking time to talk with us, and we look forward to seeing you out on the trail.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.